All right. Hopefully everybody can hear me. Can someone say if they can't? No, we're good.
Yeah, the panelists can't. They can't.
Fantastic. All right. Good afternoon. My name is Matt Hayes. I'll be your moderator today. Welcome to today's webinar hosted by NAMA, the Great Lakes chapter. We are excited for you to join us for an in-depth discussion on a topic that's both timely and impactful, tackling vape disposal, because we are only seeing more and more and more and more and more vapes coming around. For those of you who are new to our organization, the North American Hazardous Materials Management Association is dedicated to promoting the safe and responsible management of hazardous materials. Our Great Lakes chapter plays a key role in advancing this mission through regional collaboration, training, and advocacy. We have a couple great speakers for you today, but before we get to that, just a couple quick announcements. Before we begin, I'd like to highlight an important upcoming event. The NAMA Great Lakes chapter, in partnership with W2RO, is hosting an 8-hour training course on December 18th. This is an excellent opportunity to deepen your knowledge and network with fellow professionals. So don't miss that chance. Also, the NAMA National Conference. Additionally, this will be held September 21st to 25th in 2025. So you got a little bit of time in Naperville, Illinois. Mark your calendars for this flagship event to connect with leaders in hazardous materials management. Those are my quick notes. And now a quick introduction of our first speaker. Our first speaker is Shelley Fuller, with extensive experience in hazardous waste management. Shelley has been a driving force in creating sustainable solutions for handling emerging waste streams, including vapes. Her work has been instrumental in shaping best practices in our industry, and we are thrilled to have her with us today to share her expertise. So let's welcome Shelley and not waste any more time. Here you go, Shelley.
Hey, everybody. Thanks for joining us today. I'm just going to try to share my screen really quickly. Hopefully, can you see this? Yeah, cool. All right, let's see if we can get through this together. Maybe. Cool. All right, so today we're going to be talking about how we started our collection program, how it works for us here in Boulder County in Colorado, and then how much waste we've collected so far. The problem for us is that we're seeing that there isn't a lot of convenient disposal options. So because of that, most consumers are tossing their vapes into the trash, and that is causing fires because we've got two hazards there, the battery and the nicotine. And then also that this waste is super expensive to get rid of. So I would say that I've already spent about 10 grand this year just on disposing vapes and sending them off for incineration. So just a lot to deal with just for one little waste stream. As far as our program starting, this started back in 2017. I was seeing some like e-cigarette looking devices come into our facility, and I didn't really know what they were because I don't use these products. And I was in a leadership program with some folks in the tobacco education group, and I found myself asking them questions like every single month about like, what is this stuff and how can we educate folks on proper disposal. So we ended up collaborating with public health. So it's kind of not the most common partnership, right? Hazardous materials and partnering with public health, but we've been working together since 2017, talking about safe and proper disposal. And we kind of talked about like, hey, don't leave your, vape devices laying around where a kid or a pet could eat or use those products, right? In 2019, we also partnered with the local school district, and we're helping to collect and process confiscated devices as a business. And then in 2020, we created some guidelines for the schools to kind of align with their tobacco-free school policy. And then COVID hit, and so we weren't really getting a lot of vapes from the schools. So we decided to partner with some of the local vape shops to get their consumer waste. And so this is just households dropping off their vape devices to the vape shops, and then we're taking it as household hazardous waste. And then in 2023, we received an innovative grant from our local state health department to explore local policy options and design a vape waste disposal campaign. So we're working with Product Stewardship Institute to see how we can do maybe some vape product stewardship. This is the messaging that we created for consumers, kind of talking about like nicotine being a hazard, batteries can start fires, and these are the products that we're going to be accepting at our hazardous waste disposal facility. As far as management in schools, what we're hearing is that students are vaping in the restrooms. Kids who don't vape and want to use the restroom can't really get in because the stalls are all occupied. And so a lot of times if they're getting caught, they might try to flush their vapes down the toilets. We're also seeing a lot of principals and school resource officers and school nurses confiscating devices, and they're just piling up under the desk or in a back room somewhere. And so that's what led us to want to partner with them and be a little bit more proactive instead of reactive, and creating that program for confiscated devices in schools. And so we were able to get kind of all the right people in the room together to have that conversation. So we had the communications folks, we had public health, we had the environmental services team, all of them kind of come together, and we created this program to set up bins in the local school district to collect those confiscated vapes. And so what we have are these used battery collection bins, hazardous waste labels, gloves, and then we ask them to have no student access. So one of the schools has it just in a filing cabinet, but I also wanted to have clear bins so that we could see how full those bins were getting, so it wouldn't be super out of sight, out of mind, and then we've just got vapes collecting forever and forgetting about that 2.2 pound limit that we have for very small quantity generators. And so this is an example of what's in the bin. And so this is one of the schools that dropped off this summer. And then we will take it out, weigh it to make sure that we haven't exceeded that 2.2 pound limit. And then we inventory everything that we get in. And that's just for me because I want to know what we're collecting so that I can have the data available when we start doing product stewardship and some kind of EPR. And so some of the difficulties that we're seeing with this school collection program is that even though I'm working with one school district, they have 29 different locations, and every school is going to do things a little bit differently. In one school, it's going to be a principal collecting, in another school, it's a nurse collecting, another school, it's a school resource officer. So it's just a little bit different everywhere. And also every summer there's turnover in the schools, and so we have to re-educate them every year about, hey, this is the process for dealing with confiscated vapes. And then the other issue that we have is that nicotine is a P-listed waste, and so we can only take 2.2 pounds of a P-listed waste from the schools, and so that limits the amount of waste that we can take each month from that school. And so in that bucket that you saw on the slide before this, that was 2.2 pounds of vape devices. It turned out to be only 16 devices that we could take that month. And then it gets really expensive. So I think we're charging about $21 a pound for vapes to come in from a school because it's so expensive for us to get rid of. All right, and then I kind of wanted to show this slide. This is one of my friends who is an art teacher at one of the local high schools, and he wanted to do a take back program for a voluntary collection. And so we didn't count this as school waste because this was a voluntary, not a confiscation. And so he set up this program and collected 312 voluntary devices from high school students in 1 week. And the bracelets here are showing that if you were, vape or substance free for 24 hours, you got one color, 24 days, another color. And this is kind of his way to kind of like rep your sobriety. So that was kind of a fun thing that he did, but I feel like we're only getting a fraction of what's out there if we can collect 312 devices from just one high school in 1 week. All right, so here's just a glance at the toolkits that we've created. We created an electronic smoking disposal guide, another toolkit. These are pretty much outdated at this point, but when I have copious amounts of free time, I will update these and share them with you folks. Basically, it's getting down to nicotine is an acute hazardous waste and batteries can start fires, but we've also got all the steps and the supplies of everything that we've bought to kind of help you start your own program. All right, this video is showing how we collect vapes from consumers. This is something that we made this summer for our campaign to let folks know that as a consumer, you can drop off your vapes to one of the local vape shops that we partner with for free, and then we will pay for that disposal for you. And so here's kind of just a map of all the location sites we have across the county. We aren't taking any THC devices because the DEA says I would be a glorified drug trafficker if I did. So we're just sticking with the good old nicotine and disposing of that. So how it works for us, same supplies I'm giving to the schools, I'm giving to the vape shops. We have signage for them. Try to have a conversation with the staff there and let them know that we're not going to take any THC products, but it is a free collection and that we won't take any of their shop waste. Right now we have about 20 different vape drop-off sites. We try to have conversations with folks to let us know, like, if they have any THC devices, we're asking them to just throw that in the household trash. If we see any devices that come in and see that little THC sticker, if we can separate the battery, we will, but if not, that whole device has to go into the trash. So we're really just asking folks to be honest with us because it is a free program. All right, so drop off at the shops. I just wanted to show me a comparison of what we're seeing at the different shops. And so this is 3 different shops in the same month. You know, you get some folks that have, 73 pounds, and then some folks that are going to have like half the amount of that. But this is what we're seeing from 1 month collection at a vape shop right now from our consumers. And then once we get these devices, what we're going to do is kind of organize them by the type of vapes so that we can count them and inventory them. And so on the left, you see Sophie here sorting everything. In the middle, we've got her notes. And then on the right, you can see the data tracking. And so I can say so far, as of August 13th, we had 1,329 Geek Bar Pulse devices come into our facility. And for us, this is definitely an extra step, and I don't think everyone should do this unless you have lots of time. But this, I think, will help us when we start to tackle product stewardship. And I can say this is an exact number. This started back in the day when people were like, you're probably getting tons of joules, right? And I was like, I don't know that I am. And so I had all the numbers so that I could like justify what I was getting. All right, so the inventory, this shows just a comparison from last year to this year. And so last year we had 120 drop-offs, 50 of them were from schools, 44 were from those vape shop collections. We had a total of 7,706 devices, which equaled 790 pounds of waste, right? So this year, it's October, this is through October at least. We had 113 drop-offs so far, 32 from schools, 46 from the vape shops. We did add more vape shops this year. So far, we've had 9,359 devices and shipped over 1,000 pounds. So I think from this, what I'm seeing is that the devices used to be a lot more slim and skinny and weighed less, and now they're getting bigger and heavier. So when we have that 2.2 pound limit, we're getting less and less devices that can come in each month because they're heavier and bigger. And also, if for folks who have to pay by the pound, this gets more costly for disposal. All right, lessons learned. The industry is constantly changing, right? You can see just from last year to this year, the vapes have changed. Communication is key. So setting up, getting all the right people in the room to set up a program was super important for us. The next steps for us are to explore those local policy options. Like I said, we're working with PSI, Product Stewardship Institute, and we're hoping to maybe tackle some local tobacco licensing in the retail shops. We also want to work on a community media campaign. So we hired a company to create all of our graphics and that video for us. And so this year we just need to launch it. And then we're trying to increase our convenient disposal options. So last year we only had 13 collection sites. This year we're up to 20. And so hopefully we can continue that trend and keep that going. And then lastly, we want to see how we can keep this sustainably, right? Like, so last year I already spent $5,000 on vape waste disposal. I've already spent 10 grand this year, and the year isn't even over. So as we grow, we get more vapes and the costs just keep going up. So we need to figure out how we can do this forever and ever. But that's all I got. Happy to chat more, answer questions after Clayton or now.
I think we'll do the questions now, just because
Okay.
they'll be fresh in your mind before we move on to Clayton.
Okay.
So I'll if you'd like, I can just read them to you from the chat and you can kind of field them. That might be quickest.
Cool.
Cool. Tyler asks, what about the cannabis vapes, which I believe you covered, right? You don't take those
No.
because the DEA says you're not a drug dealer. Okay. Liz asks, how do you differentiate the non-nicotine? Is it a don't ask, don't tell situation?
We actually try to ask. Most people are here to try to do the right thing, right? And so most of them are pretty honest about what they have. And so sometimes we'll see someone come in with a bunch of vapes. And if I see that little THC sticker, or if I recognize a brand, I would just ask, hey, do you have any THC devices? And if they say yes, they'll take them back. And we just explain, like, we honestly can't take them yet because all of our waste crosses state lines, and that because it's not legally allowed federally, we can't ship it out of state.
I think that answers Ralph's question too. Do all THC devices have a sticker or a badge on them, or most of them do?
Most of them do, and I don't know if that's a labeling requirement for these devices or not. I'm not a user, so I feel like when I go in, I just sound like a dummy asking questions, and the vape shop owners are just like, "Why are you asking me so many questions?" But it's because I'm trying to learn. So if someone has a better answer, I'm happy to learn from them. But I'm just kind of winging it as I go.
Uh, Elizabeth asks, is there a way to calculate the 2.2 pounds as the amount of nicotine in the vape as opposed to the weight of the whole device in order to ship higher numbers of devices, or is that impossible?
It is possible. There's some conversions out there. Somebody from Wisconsin gave me their conversion when I did a similar presentation earlier this year at the NAMA conference. And so when I have time, I will try to see if I can use that conversion and make it work. I've mostly just stuck with the 2.2 pound limit for the entire device as a CYA so that I never exceed that nicotine limit. But I think at one point the EPA had said, like, hey, it could be like 1,000 pods would be that 2.2 pound limit. I don't know that I really want to count to 1,000, but that would be the limit. Ooh, Devin, way to hook it up. So, sorry, Matt, can you read what Devin said?
Yeah, Devin Kramer wrote, in Colorado, all THC devices are required to be labeled either with the cannabis leaf or the THC symbol. So, fantastic.
Yeah.
Josh says there are some specialty vape shops or manufacturers that will dispose of the THC vapes. And Clayton says here in Canada, it's the same in terms of labeling requirements. So look at that, Shelly. People are helping you out.
Thank you. Oh, Chris.
Chris Bland, yeah, I worked with WI, and recently they have exempted residential vaping devices from hazardous waste rules. So we're all learning a lot. There are a couple questions in the Q&A portion. I'll read those as well. Paul asks, how do you know what chemical is in the device? Do you assume that it's nicotine?
We do assume it's nicotine, and like I said, we try to ask as much as possible. It's a little bit harder for the confiscated devices at schools that have come from, students, and the administrators don't know what they are. But if we see that THC on there, we just toss those out or give it back to the school district, actually.
Great. And the last question we have for you, Shelly, before we let you go, are all batteries in vape devices recycled separately?
No. So if we can get the battery out, so like in a mod device where the battery is easily removable, we will recycle those with the other household batteries that we have. But if they're embedded in that vape device, which most single-use devices are now, we're having to ship that entire device, nicotine, battery, entire thing is going for incineration.
Understood. I lied. Julie just asked a question, so you're not off the hook quite yet. How does the labeling work with vapes that are ordered online?
Oof. I don't know. I think we're just assuming. Honestly, I haven't. Oh, it's the same. Okay. I was gonna say I haven't seen like super colorful THC devices. And so mostly what I'm seeing for THC devices are like the pens. And so a lot of what I'm seeing from consumers as far as vape devices are these super colorful, like geek bar devices. And so I feel like those are nicotine and not THC.
Great. All right. So if we don't have any further questions, we can move on to our second speaker, who, if you haven't guessed already, is Clayton Miller. Clayton is widely respected for his operational expertise in hazardous materials management. His innovative approaches and practical knowledge make him a trusted resource in our industry. Today, Clayton will share his insights on the operational challenges and solutions for vape disposal. So I will hand it over to Mr. Miller.
Okay, just give me a moment. I just lost my presentation. Here we go. What are you guys seeing right now?
Your
can see
your
quantum
screen,
life cycle.
you just
There,
have to
you've
put
seen
it in.
this? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Cool. Perfect. Thanks, everybody. I'm really happy to be here today. I'm sitting in an airport lounge and just landed, so apologies for being a little bit discombobulated. So Quantum, this is me. Quantum is Canada's largest electronic recycler. We also are an ITAD service provider, which means we refurbish and resell IT assets in addition to recycling them. And this is kind of a bit of our history in terms of the timeline of how we came to be. But that's not what this is about. So I'm just going to move past that really quickly. This is how we are deployed across Canada. We have facilities, from coast to coast, where we do reuse, refurbishment, and recycling, including the disposal of vapes, which is what we're here to talk about today. Ultimately, our goal as a company is to provide value, be it in the form of better environmental performance, be it in the form of cost efficiency and value maximization, or data security. There's all number of ways that we create value for our customers, be they municipal, governmental, or private sector or residential. These are the certifications that we do our work under. These are all various certifications related to data security, related to hazardous waste, related to safety, related to ultimately good recycling practices. And this is the lens that we bring to the vape conversation. So with that, that's basically it for the visuals. So I'm actually going to stop sharing now and just speak to you about vapes. So as we identified vapes as an opportunity to kind of look into many, many years ago now, just because we were just getting so many calls about how to manage this waste stream from an assortment of places. This is around the time when cannabis was being legalized in Canada. So there were a lot of the producers who were looking to us to say, hey, I want to have a robust vape recycling program so that I can, show that I'm a good corporate citizen and not a drug dealer. And ultimately that was kind of the start. Then COVID happened. And so we launched a return to retail program in partnership with one of the largest cannabis producers in Canada that basically died out of the gate because COVID happened, all retail shut down, and the program sat there kind of in limbo for many years. Since then, we've continued our thoughts and research on vapes, and that's really what I'll talk about today. At the end of the day, vapes are a clear and present danger within the waste system. As Shelley has so eloquently put, they end up in all kinds of places. They just get thrown in the garbage. They get mixed in with other recyclables. People aren't really sure what to do with them. And ultimately, the risk that they pose is in the battery. The battery is a fire risk. Increasingly, the design of these devices is so that you can't remove the battery, which is a real shame, because when this industry started, and actually I'll go on a little tangent here. So I'm a vapor. I vape cannabis, and this is the one that I use. This one has batteries that you can remove. This was the standard design when vaping first became a thing. And then they've moved away. This is called a mod, by the way. They've moved away from that to these disposable units for whatever reason, marketing really. And it's caused this new problem in the vape stream, where now you have a device with an embedded battery that poses a risk from a fire standpoint. Shelley also spoke about the changing nature of the devices, and what we've seen is a transition away from these pen mods, which were disposable, but at least they had a small battery with a small amount of charge, to these bigger units that are designed to be rechargeable, but still disposable. So the amount of liquid in them lasts for a month, but you can recharge the device several times. That's great. from i.e. in the sense that you're generating less devices overall. So that's probably a positive thing, but it also results in a situation where the devices that are ending up in the waste stream potentially have much more charge and much more risk in them. So that's kind of framing the picture from a risk standpoint and why we need to get these things out. I think the other thing is, of course, the fact that the nicotine and the THC, you know, these are essentially controlled substances and they should be managed in a controlled way, you know, for the health and safety of citizens and children mostly, right? You don't want these things just kind of ending up in random places and people are randomly vaping random vapes. So that's kind of what's, you know, to just to frame it up. And then in terms of the challenges that we face as a recycler, many similar to what Shelley was talking about, but just from a slightly different perspective. So, you know, we're seeing these things mixed in with other electronics, but because they're so small, they really get into everything. They're easy to miss. And if you put a vape through a shredding process, you potentially have a fire. In fact, you do have a fire. And you know, that's a standard reality in our world. In the electronics recycling space, you are going to have fires in your operation if you're shredding electronics. But ultimately, we do as much as we can to control that. And it's hard to control if you don't even know that you're putting batteries into your shredder. So that would be one of the biggest risks. The other risks are around downstream. We, despite having looked at this for the better part of 5 years now, we still don't have a straight answer from any authority on if we're legally allowed to even be in possession of this stuff. So, you know, we have people that call us and say, hey, I've got a box of vapes. And, you know, if they're willing to pay, we do take them in today. But, you know, I am wondering at any moment, am I going to get a call from Health Canada, RCMP, what have you, on, you know, illegal quantities of THC and nicotine existing within my facility. So, you know, we're assuming that we're on the right side of the law there, but we don't really know. And that has caused us to pause in terms of like really investing in this much more. That and a few other reasons, which I'll get into in a minute. So the other risk as a processor is that this stuff, once you put it through your process, the THC and the nicotine, and the THC in particular, contaminates other commodities within your stream, right? So, and even if you separate your vapes and only process your vapes as a uniform stream, you still end up with contaminated output. And to the earlier question about, you know, am I legally allowed to accept these? There's another question: am I legally allowed to ship these? From a downstream perspective. And since some of our downstreams reside in the United States or across international borders, you know, we potentially run the risk of getting into serious trouble as a company and as individuals for essentially exporting drugs. So we don't. This stuff doesn't go to the normal downstreams that we use in other instances, even if those might be the most appropriate. And then, you know, I'll kind of end on the fact that there's a cost element to all this. Shelley mentioned $21 a pound. I mean, and that is very high, but also I appreciate that there's marketing costs in there. There's handling, there's upstream and downstream, you know, all the counting time, all that stuff. It's actually fairly reasonable, you know, just to put it in perspective you know, as a processor of this stuff. My base cost, without really factoring in margin, is around $4 a pound. And you know, typically I would want to charge between 5 and 6. The market doesn't support that rate. So, you know, I say what I'd like to charge is between $5 and $6 a pound. I very rarely get away with actually charging that amount. And thus the stream becomes less attractive to me as a business whose goal is to both help the environment, but also make a profit. So the result then is that, you know, there are vapes that we get called on to recycle that we don't recycle just because the person who has the vapes isn't willing to pay the cost. And that leads me to, ultimately the solution. And for those Americans on the call, you you have different forms of stewardship for electronics at the state level. About half of the states currently have an electronics recycling regulation or legislation on the books. In Canada, every province has one, and so that's good in the sense that it makes it uniform across the country. Although each province has slight variances in how they manage e-waste, but thus far none of them include vapes. And so from us, in order for us as a processor and a private business, who wants to do the right thing, but also needs to make a profit, until there's solid and stable funding in place for to pay for the various parts of collection, processing, and ultimately reporting on this stream in the form of some sort of stewardship program, we would argue that there isn't going to be a robust solution for vapes until government steps in and does a few things. They need to mandate that landfill disposal is banned. Governments are hesitant to do that. They're afraid of increasing other forms of illegal dumping. And I understand that, but ultimately, one must be bold if one is going to solve problems. I think the other thing is the implementation of some sort of revenue model, like an eco fee is what I would recommend. A charge that is applied at the point of purchase, which goes into a fund, which then pays approved processors of the material, approved transporters of the material, approved collectors of the material, to compensate them for the work that they're doing. That is fundamentally how the programs work in Canada with other types of electronics. And in Canada, and I would follow on kind of some universal things that we can lean into, both in Canada and the United States. We have stewardship programs for batteries. They're called Call to Recycle. That's a North American program, although, two separate organizations operating in the US and Canada, but a common brand across both countries. Call to Recycle is made up of the various large battery producers, most of whom have batteries that are in these devices. And we would argue, and we're seeing a move towards this in Canada, where Call to Recycle seems to be stepping up to be the primary stewardship program for vapes, although currently only Quebec is considering putting vapes as part of the thing. Although I think it's more than considered. Like, I think it is going to become real in 2025. So that'll mean there'll be one province in Canada with a mandate to ensure vapes get recycled. And it makes a lot of sense to us. The Call to Recycle would be the organization to manage these. Because I guess the one positive about vapes is that, unlike batteries, which actually pose a fire hazard in the form that they sit in because of the risk of if you put a whole bunch in a box, the connectors can create a circuit and ultimately create a fire. In vapes, because they're embedded batteries, you can throw as many vapes as you want into a box and not have that risk. So what that does is, if you have a solid way of collecting the vapes and you have a solid way of kind of collecting some revenue for that, then you have a fairly easy time shipping these things to a downstream processor like myself, without all the fire risks and the packaging requirements that come with collection of batteries. So I think that is everything I have to say about it, and I'm happy to just answer some questions.
All right. We only have one question currently, but it's a long one, so I'll get to it. It's from Chris again. I don't know if it's a question or if it's a comment, but I'll just read it nonetheless. That contamination issue, if applied to nicotine vapes, as Clayton referred to THC contamination, then you potentially might not be able to recycle the batteries due to that contamination. I disassembled a device, and the vaping fluid gets everywhere. To decontaminate, you generate P-listed spill debris, thereby generating more waste and increasing costs just to recycle a battery.
Yeah, that's a good point. It actually, I wanted to say this a little more clearly. This is not a recycling conversation. I think it's very important that we be realistic about that. This is a disposal conversation. Because of everything Chris just said and a whole bunch of other things, it's very hard to, and because of the size of these things, because of the value of these things, because of a whole bunch of reasons, what we're talking about here is safe disposal of vapes. The idea that we're, initially we were stymied in the first few years that we were looking at this by everyone wanting what do you mean? You can't recycle every part of the vape? And people were upset about that. And I'm like, well, hey, I didn't design them. And ultimately, I think people need to be realistic about that. If states and provinces are trying to create programs that mandate the recycling of these vapes, they're setting themselves up from failure. This is about controlling the risk of fires in the battery stream and so that they don't show up in our blue boxes and all our various other waste streams.
Great. No further questions in the chat. I'm checking over in question and answer.
To answer the question about design, it's what I showed you earlier. Government should mandate that the batteries can be removed. Like literally, look how easy this is. It's there. And then it's there. Like you can't do that with the vapes that are being sold on the market today.
Seems pretty simple. There was another question Elizabeth just posted. Is there any way to affect design so that they are all easier to recycle? Well, I think you kind of answered that. Yeah. So make them removable. Makes sense to me. But I'm not a vapor, so.
I'm not supposed to be. I'm so bad.
Hey, we'll forgive you. You're an expert.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, there you go.
It's research. It's market research. That's all it is.
Yeah.
I don't see any further questions. Matt, did you have some comments you wanted to make? I see you're not muted.
No, I don't see any other things in the Q&A. Also, to everybody, thanks for participating today on today's webinar on vapes. And thanks, Shelly, again, and Clayton for stepping up to the plate. If you guys have any questions for Clayton and that, we'll share his contact information. And also to the presentation will be in the paywall for the NAMA members as well. Oh, Chris has got another one.
I think US DOT will affect transportation in the US due to rules for transporting lithium battery containing devices. Probably right.
Which is another reason why they need to be removable, because then at least you don't have a double problem of THC contamination plus, hazardous waste. And lithium is a strategic resource, folks. Like, we should not be landfilling this stuff.
Yeah, seems pretty easy if you could just take the batteries out of all of them, but alas.
Yes.
As I said, I don't see any other questions in the chat. Any last minute stragglers for any questions for any of the panelists today? No, don't see anything. Well, Clayton, thanks again for taking your time in between your flights.
Oh, there is another question.
Oh, sorry.
And that's fine. I got some time here. So
yeah.
The short answer is some provinces do. It's being considered widely, and I suspect within a few years that will be the case, that there'll be flavor bans.
Talking about flavor bans.
Yes, talking about flavor bans, yes.
Great. And Jeanette has another question. All right. Currently, what are your recommendations for vape shops to dispose of one-time use vapes?
Well, if they're in Colorado, they should call Shelly. Otherwise, it depends on where you are. I mean, ultimately, if you're willing to pay, there are options. I'm just telling you that it's not going to be cheap. You should expect to pay at least $5 a pound.
All right. Okay, fantastic. Anything further, Matt?
No, I don't see anything else in the chat. As I said, the presentation will be shared with all the NAMA members. And again, thanks for everybody for attending today's webinar. We'll give you 20 minutes back on your day, and we'll go from there.
Thanks, everyone.
Great. Thank you.
think I end that.